Hey everyone, welcome to the last session of the day of Accelerate. Super excited to have everyone part of our event, and thank you so much for attending this. I know it's been a long day, but really wanted to wrap it up with our three line of service leaders of Innovate, Build, and Run, and that's Stephen, Taylor, and Danny. And what we're going to talk about for this last session is how to protect your market position and ignite growth. What does that mean? The link between future proofing and constant evolution. So let's do some quick intros and then we'll get started. All right, Stephen, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it off to Taylor and Danny.
All right, thanks, Kathy. So my name is Stephen Granese, and I'm the managing director of our Innovate line of service. And what we do in the Innovate line of service is we focus on strategic consulting. We focus on agile coaching and transformations, DevOps transformations, product management, innovation strategy. So what we want to help our clients to really think about what do they need to do today, but just as important, what's the future look like? Having a roadmap for the future. And that obviously that roadmap will include technology, but we also look more broadly than just technology into what's the entire portfolio for your organization, and specifically as it relates to innovation.
Thanks, Stephen. Taylor, you're up next.
Excellent. Thank you. So Taylor Howard, Managing Director of the Build Practice. And I love everything Stephen just described that Innovate does, because we work hand in hand with them on implementing those needs. So when Innovate has identified and helped you identify and really rationalize, a product, something that you need to implement to better your business, that's where Build comes in. And we've got practices around experience, applications, insights, so artificial intelligence, validation, collaboration. These are all just tools, all right? They're interesting tools. We're super proud of them. But really, it's our clients' business objectives that rationalize all of that. And our mission is to deliver as fastly and as safely as we can into production as soon as possible, which is really where value is realized. And we're up and running in production. That's where we've got Danny's team, the operators, to make sure that that's a great experience. So that's a little bit of Build, and then I'll lead in right into Danny. So.
Thank you, Taylor, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Danny Novello, and I am the Managing Director of our Run line of service. And just as Taylor was saying, we have the enormous responsibility of keeping the lights on, of running your software, the software of our customers, in the most reliable and steady way, and provide a great experience to our end users and our final customers. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for attending.
All right, thanks guys, appreciate that. And by the way, for folks out there, my name is Kathy Sadden. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, and I work very closely with all three of these guys. All right, let's get started. Let's get rolling. Stephen, I'm going to start off with you.
All right.
Your practice is called Innovate. What does that mean? How do clients inject innovation into a mindset in their organization? Do they use design thinking to enable problem discovery? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I think we all know that the word innovation means a lot of different things to different people. I'm certainly not going to pretend we have the one definition figured out. But the way I like to talk about innovation is not about the techniques and the practices, but it's rethinking the problems that you have, reframing the problems that you have, and trying to say what other solutions can we come up with that maybe we didn't think about before. And typically, that's often simpler solutions. It doesn't have to be complex solutions. It doesn't have to be implemented in technology only. Although certainly a lot, technology is associated with innovation. But oftentimes, what you see is simple problems. Simple solutions to age-old problems, but you're thinking about them in a different way. Yeah, we use lots of techniques, design thinking techniques, which is really about, rediscovering problems that you have, but thinking about it in a more holistic, creative way. That's something that we do a lot. We do training classes to teach people about, the agile mindset and, what's a different way of solving your problem. There's lots of different techniques we can do. But again, the goal here when we work with our clients is to say, hey, stop thinking in the way you've been thinking for a long time. What if we can challenge you to think differently? And when you have those constraints, and it will help impose those constraints. Sometimes it's a time boxing constraint, like a 2-week sprint, and there's other types of constraints that we can have. When you have a constraint, it forces people to be creative, and that's what we're trying to do, is really unleash the creativity with our clients, and we facilitate that process.
Thanks so much, Stephen. So I want to feed off some of the comments that you said and bounce over to Taylor. So Stephen, you talked about challenge to think differently, simple solutions. Taylor, we talk about digital delivery. How does that fold into some of these concepts on simple solutions? What does that mean? How can companies use that to future-proof themselves?
So I like the question, and I think the way that we do that, and as an IT organization, again, with all of these great tools we have, for application development and artificial intelligence, just different tools that we have, I think the key is connecting those back into what the business objective is. So when we're delivering, when we're working on a piece of functionality that ultimately is a business need, that Stephen's team, and that the teams have worked together to help really rationalize and make sure we've identified that appropriately, we do want to measure, what is the time that's been identified to the time that actually gets into the hands of our end users, and make sure that we're getting feedback from those end users. And feedback is such an important thing. Then, we're able to quantify and measure not just the time that it took to build that, but the feedback from our people that are actually experiencing it, and ideally bring that back around to our client's business objective. So now it's not really an IT discussion that we're having, but it's how we help the business move forward with some of those objectives. And it may have been delivered through an IT solution, but that helps us best understand where should that future investment be. Where should we bolster, some of the IT capabilities that we're bringing to bear? And it's all rationalized on active user feedback. And so that I think really changes that and allows us to pivot, allows us to deliver faster and make sure we're delivering the best right thing, to our clients, because it's been, we've got the information that tells us that. And so that's where then all of the engineering under the covers falls into play. And that's really a DevOps mentality that we have, and making sure that operations and the business and engineering are all very well connected together.
Great points that you bring up, Taylor, on that feedback. I'm hearing feedback from the business community on DevOps and speed to business results on this, which I think is a great point. I'm going to bounce over to Danny on some of that. Danny, you've got the run piece around digital operations and continuous optimization. How do you use that feedback from the client base? How does that benefit companies around support and delivery? How do we use that?
Well, the digital age that we're living in really has increased the interaction that we have with our customers online, mostly. I mean, everybody's right now putting out their services in the cloud space, but that adds a lot of layers of complexity, applications, infrastructure. There's legacy systems still in there, and all of that technologies, all that tools, they are not manually manageable anymore. We really have to help the companies that have invested really heavily in their digital transformation, and that has cost a lot of the revenue that comes directly from those services provided online. So therefore, we really need to make sure that the interactions that we have with our customers online, through the systems, through the digital products and services that we provide, they have a good quality. Because we probably will never meet that customer. We will not have a second chance to really put a service in front of them. So the systems we're running, they really need to be, they have a high quality. They really have to have a high quality. And that's when the systems that we bring online, and they need to be very efficient operationally speaking. Today we are facing that challenge. Sorry, Taylor, you want to say something?
Yeah, I might jump in. I agree. And, if I can do kind of the pull through on all of this, how I might frame it up is, when we identify that important business objective, whatever it is that service we need to provide for our users, one of the things that's so important with the business, engineering, and the operators together is to agree on what is that digital representation that is a proxy for the business need. So that's where in our service, our site reliability engineer type mentality, which is a certain flavor of DevOps, we'd say, what is that indicator that we can engineer into the software that is a representation of the business need? And then, because that's an assumption we have. And what are the operating parameters of that? So now when we go ahead and deploy that, we know when we're in specification, we know what we need to do from an infrastructure, we know what the cost of all of that is, and now we can tie that back to the business need. And so it really brings it all the way back around, and we're getting this great feedback from our users on whether it's we need to adjust it a little left or right. But it's all those things that come together, which allow now make a business decision on, do we continue investing in this area? Do we need to accelerate this a little bit more? Are we realizing the business benefits we wanted? But I might advocate, Danny, it's those digital proxies that we put into the solution that really allow us to provide that good answer. And that lights up all kinds of other things like AI ops. Danny, I know that you've been talking a lot about that, where now the system can start making its own decision around scalability, around those objectives, which we're getting into a really exciting place once we start talking about that and putting that in place.
That's right. And there are two aspects here. When we talk about operation, there's the technology part and there's the people, right? So we really want the people to work on the relevant tasks in an operating framework. So today, a lot of the low complexity tasks, they are high volume tasks. We don't want our talent to be focused there. And that is that all the technology that I was talking to you earlier about generates. All these layers, they end up having our people spending 20 to 30% of their time just executing repetitive tasks. But we need them to deliver more strategic value. We want them executing projects that bring better digital services to our customers and doing technology refresh instead of just clearing queues or analyzing logs and things like that. And that's when we combine the power of technology and people who's focused on analyzing the information as opposed on troubleshooting things that an algorithm or that we can detect or that we can automate. That's when digital operations, they become modern, when you start applying artificial intelligence and really trying to triage automatically the different incidents that we can have in production and try to solve them or even anticipate them if possible. That's the business impact that we're trying to have.
So great points on everyone, and I want to pull on that thread for a moment. Let's talk about that. This is a really good conversations on the intersection of technology and people. So I'm on the business side of the equation. Awesome, great. But how is it measured? How is it measured, tested, and validated for value delivered? How do we do that?
So I'm looking at Stephen right now, and I'm thinking of, I don't know, value stream mapping is where you want to go, because I'm thinking of some areas where we've done this and helped out some clients.
Yeah, so value stream mapping, that's a technique that we do. But what's the goal? What's the purpose of it? It actually relates back to what? I'm sorry.
And what is it?
Yeah, what is it? So that value stream mapping, the core idea is like, how do you design how value is going to flow throughout your organization? So oftentimes we'll start with a client, and it takes too long to lots of different ways to define value. But let's talk about, software. How fast can you get your software into the hands of the customer? Not just testing it, not just getting feedback on it, which is all important, but into their hands so they're using it so that to solve their problems, right? That's value. That's when they have received value. Well, a lot of organizations that we see, that we help, it takes too long inside their organization to take an idea, to get it through their organization and materialize that's to real value. That could be coding a software product or whatever the case is. So value stream mapping is just a technique to say, what's our future state? What does this process look like? How should value flow? And ideally, you want to make that as fast as we can, of course. How can we reduce the red tape, the bureaucracy, the politics, just the number of steps it takes to get an idea into the customer's hands? So that's where we want to start. It is about the people. It's about how work flows throughout the organization. We have to start there first. We want to create a path so that inside an organization, we can take an idea, break it down into small pieces, build it quickly, deploy it quickly, get it into the customer's hands, and get feedback. And I know the theme, Kathy, of this conversation is future-proofing. Well, from my perspective, future-proofing is about how fast can we get feedback? If you're getting feedback continuously, quickly, and I mean real feedback, meaning that feedback on value that's been delivered. So imagine you put value into a customer's hands, your user's hands, and you put it in their hands to solve a real problem, and see if they like it or they don't like it. Does it work for them? Does it not work for them? Real, honest feedback. Then you can adjust. And in your companies, if you're able to design your own systems so that you can adjust what your teams are working on based on that real feedback, well, that's the start of future-proofing, because then you can always adapt to no matter what the market throws at you.
And as an example, Stephen, I'm thinking of it's one of those things that is sometimes easy to say, but it really shines a bright light on some of the organizational changes that have to go through. I'm thinking of a specific client where engineering is going great, something's getting built and it's ready to go, but it's taking about 3 weeks to go through security review, InfoSec, findings might be found before it actually got into the hands of end users, so and that was just on average. And that's where in a value stream, you can see that bottleneck. The change that I had to make right there is to bring those security team members into the teams doing the work. So that was now a continuous part of the process. Really easy to say, but that's a people change. That's an organizational change in how the controls of that firm work that now need to be brought into the teams. So that way, when it's done, it's really done, and we're ready to deliver that value to the customer. But that was a big change. But using some of the techniques and with the support of Innovate and everyone working together, we can highlight the value proposition, and it really helps the team, the client, understand how changing the system makes it better for everyone involved. And it justifies the work that we should do. So that mentality, that mindset, and rinse and repeat, keep applying that, is really what I might advocate that the future proofing is all about.
Yeah, and I love that, Taylor. And you'll hear us, you'll hear this group here talk about feedback all the time. That's one of my favorite words. Another one of my favorite words to use, especially with clients, is the word constraint. So it's really critical, I believe, to put constraints on your teams. So in that example you were talking about, Taylor, right, where the client, it was taking 3 weeks from the time that the team built the software within a sprint and to get it out into the production environment. So if there's no constraints on that process, then it'll take as long as it takes, right? But if we were to challenge a client to say, hey, how long would you like it to take? Let's start there. They may say, well, I mean, ideally it would take 2 days, but that won't happen here. Okay, well, what would you need to change in order to get that software out in 2 days? And you'll get a lot of resistance. Hey, that's not possible. Well, what if it was? What would we need to change? And so, frankly, that's we talked earlier about redefining the problem. That's a lot of what it takes for real transformation, is to say, wait, let's give ourselves a constraint. Let's try to solve this problem within a constraint. It may be painful, it may be hard, there may be a lot of change that's required, but ultimately we need to start by defining what is the future state that we want to get to, and then we have to have a lot of challenging discussions and a lot of reframing the problem, say, how would we actually get there? And it's not easy work. Transformation is just not easy work.
And it's all about having that innovation mindset, right, around transformation. Danny, do you want to add to the conversation here?
Yeah, while you guys were talking about feedback, I couldn't avoid thinking about the finger pointing, when you get feedback from people and they say, no, this is not me, it was you. And it makes me think about my own area and how are we applying machine learning to really let the machines identify the root cause of the problems, so that our conversations become more on how to solve the problems, how are we going to solve those problems, as opposed to identifying who's the one who generated the problem. So I agree with you. I mean, the feedback, what we want to do is increase and accelerate the feedback loops. And the feedback loops, it's also, again, between people, processes. But if we have a way to better and faster understand the dependencies of the applications, the infrastructure, and the changes we do, and what are the impacts that they generate into our customer systems, then we have a better way to work. And this is a more collaborative way to interact operations with development, by understanding exactly the cause effect of things, and making sure that the things that we change, what effect they have all the way to production.
And I think, Danny, there's also a piece of that I might advocate is just good housekeeping, if I can frame it that way, from an engineering perspective. When we first started right here, and I was talking about build, and really I think it applies to all of us, wanting to deliver as fastly and as safely. Fast and safe go together. And what allows us to do that, quickly and safely, and the safety comes in automation, I'd advocate. If I'm a developer writing a piece of, functionality or really value into the system, and I make a mistake because I'm human, that automation, all right, unit testing, integration testing, ideally lets me know right then and there, and I fix it, piece of cake. Without that automation, that could go up through the environments. That could actually get in the hands of a customer. Now the identification of who needs to remediate that's a completely different experience, and really is a big constraint on the way we're delivering value, if I can kind of frame it that way, getting back to Stephen, what you were saying. So automation, and just rigor around that, and that's just, I chalk that up to good housekeeping, is a prerequisite for these. And there's all kinds of ways that we measure this. Measuring is like it's a bright spotlight on the things that we're doing, so we can know where we're at. And when we change this system, we can see how we've improved it. Or if we haven't, we know we need to go back and say, hey, that didn't work. Let's make an adjustment on it. But that's what brings us safety, and that's what allows us to go quickly, is that automation. That good housekeeping is really important.
And Taylor, let's talk about that word safety for a minute. Sorry, Kathy, because
no, go for it.
Such an important word. And I'm assuming when you were just talking about the example of automation, and if a developer makes a problem, hey, let's catch that problem before it goes into production. And so that's great. And what goes along with that is the psychological safety for that person. Understanding that they're safe from making a big mistake, deploying something in production. Maybe they have concerns about, gosh, would I get fired if I made this mistake, or something like that. And when there's safety, when people understand that it's okay to try things, it's okay to take a risk, that is when true innovation can really start to bubble up from the surface. People can try something. They can try a technique. They can try new functionality. They can take an idea that they had and just build it and put it in front of an end user, a customer, because they understand that, hey, there's safety around it. It's okay if I screw up and if I fail. A big part of that is technical, but an even bigger part of that is cultural in organizations as well, right? I believe that real innovation can't happen if people are scared. Again, scared to make a mistake, scared to fail. And so there's lots of different elements there. But
You
again,
have to
safety is
take
the roots of innovation.
you have to take risks, and we have to put our people solving hard problems. That's when innovation really shows up, when people are challenged to get away from their comfort zone and really do things. And honestly, today, a lot of our people is getting burned doing repetitive tasks. That's when automation is supposed to make our life easier, and but we need to apply it properly. Because if we automate errors, then they tend to propagate faster, right? So you have to have a framework to really be able to understand when's the right time to automate, what are the right tasks to automate, and what are you going to be measuring. I remember Taylor were saying it's all about measuring. It's the base of the feedback that we will provide. But then what are we going to measure? Really, what we're doing in RUN is evolving our operation models and modifying the monthly reports that we provide to our customers to orient them more to the business outcomes as opposed to typical data center type of KPIs. Really, customers don't care about it. If a disk is about to get filled or how many log entries did we had, those metrics they don't generate a business impact. So we really have to shift that as we think about going into a digital operations framework.
Absolutely. All three of you make excellent points. I want to anchor back on the innovation discussion that all three of you have said. Earlier today on the innovation panel, the discussion was exactly around how to drive innovation in your organization. And one of the topics discussed was top on down, leadership support, creating that safe environment and allowing people to fail fast, and getting to that iterative process. So it's great to hear this over and over again. And what I'm hearing, what we're talking about today is Lego blocks, where all of this fits in quite nicely with each other. Taylor, I've heard you talk about, in addition to this safety concept, pragmatic delivery. And I've heard you use that term quite frequently. My question to all three of you is around how do we fold that concept into an agile environment for that frequent delivery mechanism and fast feedback and helping organizations deploy quicker, faster, better?
I think the pragmatism comes from a conversation, and it is all of our jobs, when there's, as to the why we do things. And we need to explain to our clients when we're working together, if we're proposing something, the why, because they've been doing things, for a certain way for a certain amount of time. And there's a reason why that's in place. And having that conversation allows us, it should be a partnership. It's not us just saying, here's how you do this because Scrum or SAFe says this is the way it's done. It's the why it's important and the value that it delivers. And that way a client can explain to us, well, here's how we've been doing things, the why that they've done that. And it's really a coming together. Stephen, you often say, we need to meet everyone where they're at and understand that as we're adjusting the process and changing the system, there's a lot of things involved in that. And so that's where the pragmatism comes from for me. It's let's make sure that we are actually making this better. Let's also be really respectful of all of those, those rituals, those ceremonies, those things that, our clients have developed throughout the years, many of them with really great roots and really important things that we need to be considerate of. So it's combining those things together. But we get there by having a dialogue.
Yeah, the question of why, it's so critical. If we were to just talk for a minute, about agile frameworks like Scrum, for example, there's so many people out there, so many organizations, so many teams out there that don't really know why they're doing it. They go through the motions, they've been trained on it. Heck, they might even do a good job, but they don't know why they're doing it. They don't understand the principles, behind it. That's really critical, as Taylor was just talking about, because, from our perspective, why do you work in this way? Why do you work in an agile way? Well, ultimately, the goal is to get fast feedback. I mean, that's the why. from my perspective, right? If we put value into the hands of customers, again, value, right? Tools that can actually solve problems for them, and then say, hey, do you like it? Tell me if you like it or don't like it. You almost keep it that simple, and then based on that feedback, then you plan out the next bunch of work, right? And then you keep adapting, you keep adapting, you keep adapting. If you build that mindset in of that, look, we can't figure out everything in the future, but we're going to adapt as we go based on the real feedback, you almost can't get it wrong. And it may sound simple, but I've seen it time and time again. You just about cannot get it wrong if that is the way that you work. And that's what we believe in. That's how we believe in solving our clients' problems for them. We don't pretend to be experts and to know everything on day one, but we're experts to getting you there. We're experts to helping you build systems that we know are future-proof because they'll work time and time again.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Stephen, our engineers, we've got these T-shirts that say "Respect the Sprint," which is a part of Scrum delivery. Maybe we need to adjust those a little bit around respect the feedback, because that's ultimately the why, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as engineers, we honestly lack communication skills. So,
but speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Some of us. I had a hard trouble, improving my communication skills. I've been working on that very hard. But we really have to take the time for our teams to really buy the ideas. We have to, when we come with innovative ideas, there are a lot of things that are going to potentially change. The tools, the process, the way the teams interact. And we want to make sure that the people understand those changes before moving on. Because people tend to feel that they lose something and they feel threatened when the tools that they have been using for so long, the platforms they spent building for many years, they have this feeling that I'm going to lose control. This brings anxiety and resistance. People say, I'm not going to embrace the change. I'm not going to change the way I'm doing. And this is a strong break, we stops or drags us from innovating, from changing. So the human aspect of that, it's so important to tell our people that these changes are not heading towards losing headcount or my department is gone, or that is, I think, a very important aspect that we have to address as we try to inject innovation in our companies, whether if it's a new way to do the things, a new tool, a new process that we're introducing.
Well, Danny, it's even to the point where we've coached our team members on how to give feedback, situation, behavior, impact, and that way you're some of that emotion you're intentionally removing from that, but that's important. Communication is important in Agile. That feedback is, feedback from the team, feedback from your customers, of course. That's critical.
Great points, guys. And it all ties back to the intersection again, technology and people at the end of the day. Also, some of the other panel discussions earlier on Agile discusses a lot of what you guys are talking about here. I want to pivot a little bit, and let's talk about peeking around the corner, kind of what's next in the future from a lot of different angles, and maybe talk about what we're seeing, and then also some obstacles or lessons learned for our audience. Things such as AI, machine learning, things such as low code, no code, GPT-3, Scope Master, accountability model. And I know all three of you have thoughts about all these things. So who wants to go first?
Well, considering you just mentioned all those awesome technologies, let me go first, Kathy, so I have a chance to get a word in. I'll let Taylor and Danny run with the technologies, and I'll listen and learn from them. When I think about the future, one of the ways I think about it, Kathy, is to go smaller. And what I mean by that is to think in faster feedback cycles, shorter time frames, because things are only getting more and more uncertain, and that can be scary. For businesses, for people. Let's think for a second about what's happened in the last year. With COVID, obviously. devastating situations on people's families and businesses. And then when you think about it from a business perspective, the way I think about it from a business perspective is, it's forced organizations to innovate because it's a big constraint. All of a sudden, you can't do things anymore that you used to be able to do, whether it's business processes, whether it's working in an office, whether it's visiting your clients, traveling, all those types of things. And so those are constraints. And so organizations are forced to innovate from my perspective, right? They're forced to come up with new ideas, new solutions to problems that didn't exist, a week before, a day before. So when we think about from my perspective, when we think about the future, it's how can we make the constraints even tighter on us, but use that as a good thing. Anticipate the future, that as being unpredictable. None of us can predict what's going to happen with COVID going forward, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But again, I think about going smaller. Like, how can we rethink our problems today and put constraints on ourselves to continually force us to innovate, so that we're better set up for the future.
Awesome, Stephen.
And as I think about the proofing the future, and where do we want to take our customers to, I think about two concepts: faster remediation of the client impacting incidents, and the predictive detection of incidents that will affect our customers. So these two aspects, and you mentioned it earlier. I mean, what are we doing to address these two objectives? It's really trying to incorporate AI and machine learning into our digital operations. In the past, we used to buy a tool for every situation: tool for monitoring the network, the applications infrastructure, my mobile devices, the security around it. And when an incident arrived, it was challenging to link the point A with the point B to identify the root cause of the problem. So everybody came out. I am sure that in the audience we're going to have a lot of IT people that they are so used to these 24 people calls. Everybody's in a silo looking at their own tool, and there are a lot of gaps because it's complex and it takes time to correlate the problems, and that only impacts the business. So what we aim to achieve today is to bring all that data into one umbrella, applying analytics into that data that is consolidated, normalizing that data in a way that it contextualizes the relationship between the infrastructures, the applications, and all the tech stack, in order to get immediate answers of where and focus our efforts in the resolution, as opposed to be tracking and identifying and troubleshooting the cause of an incident. So that's what I think about what we need to focus on: how to really normalize the data, consolidate it in a big data lake, all the operational information that we're able to grab automatically from all the different monitoring tools, and be able to correlate all of that to have everybody speaking the same language and on the same page, and really focused on solving problems rapidly and recovering fast enough.
And I would say, Danny, is that, that concept of observable systems, or observability as it's sometimes, coined, is where we understand how the system is behaving in a complex system. More importantly, is there a correlation between the behavior in the system and, a business outcome? More important than a correlation is there something causal where we can actually change the business outcome? And that's where there's some really interesting work that the team's been doing, and can't help but give a shout out to Dr. Jerry, on our design team that's been doing a lot of work with causality, understanding that around data. But that's on the IT and the operations side of it. I think another interesting area where we're going to see this evolve over the next few years is I'll kind of use GTP3 as a bit of an example to pivot off of, which, for those that don't know, it's an open AI model that was built, and you can put in some text into that and it will turn out, an answer to your generate text that most people, the average population, will think that it came from an expert, that it looks like it's well written. Now, the question there is, we may interpret that and think and see that there's meaning in that. Does the system have meaning? I'm not sure on that just yet. But one of the big changes that will happen is that as we take one of the most difficult things we do, we take a business objective and we translate that into software that delivers value. The act of that translation and the understanding, all right, of this is what I need as a business person into a technology solution, that's the art of the science. And this is an area where I think we're going to see AI really be able to change, is in that translation of here is the business need. Does it have to go through the same layers? Does that user story or that feature, does the code that it was created accurately do that? Can an AI actually help us generate some of that code? And this is an area where I think that we'll see some acceleration, but that's a very interesting space as technologies, like GTB3 and that understanding, begin to evolve more. So really adding value on the business generation of these systems.
Awesome, guys. Great discussions as we're winding down here. And by the way, Taylor, you did mention earlier, Dr. Jerry, we did have the data panel earlier today, and discussing this plus an AI panel. Great discussion, guys. Here's some takeaways that I've learned. Stephen, go smaller, constraints, innovate. And what's interesting is that when you say constraints and you think, oh gosh, okay, I can't innovate anymore. But what you're saying is the opposite. Kind of chunk it up so that you get your arms around it and it's observable and you can innovate faster, quicker, better. Great points. Danny, I heard faster remediation, predictive and proactive behavior, using data analysis and really trying to understand what are some of those problems and issues. And, this really ties into what Stephen was saying on going smaller and understanding what you have and then transporting that over into the data analytics. And then tying over here to Taylor, observable systems behavior, causal, really interesting concepts there, and using AI to drive some of this behavior, and then the whole concept on GPT-3. Love those acronyms, by the way. So any parting comments from anybody? Any other pearls of wisdom or any lessons learned that you guys want to impart with our audience today before we wrap up?
Well, I would like to say that our focus really is to change the conversation with our customers from a digital operations perspective. As I was saying, from measuring data center performance metrics like interrupt time, storage, availability, CPU usage, to how are we performing as a business? How are we overall and in real time? How much money are we losing on every disruption per minute, per hour? And how much of our system disruption translates into brand damage, for example? How many customers are we churning if we are not performing properly? Because that's the real conversation that our customers are looking for. And what are the effects of the changes that we do in our mobile apps, in our website? Do we understand how much of the revenue is growing by a new feature we put into production? That is our focus, and that would be our invitation from the run line of service to really shift your mindset towards that business outcome mindset as opposed to just operational tasks.
Yeah, Danny, I love that phrase. You said change the conversation. I mean, I think that's our why. I think here at AgileThought as consultants is that we want to help our clients to understand, why do they need to change? Why do they need to build software? Anyone can just kind of go build something based on someone's idea, but we want to help you get to the why, because ultimately we're trying to help you transform and change. We're trying to help set you up for the future as well, and that does take some deep thought. It does take some deep planning. In the long run, it's well worth it.
Yeah, and I'm going to go simple there. AgileThought, we're a company. We do what we say we're going to do. We're going to do it with quality. We want to make it, and we will make it a great experience. We love what we do, and we're going to be pragmatic about that working with you. So that's who we are.
Awesome. There's that word again, Taylor, pragmatic. Love it, love it. So we are a full service digital innovation and custom software partner for our clients. And just some parting words here. We learned a lot today in this discussion. Thank you so much, guys. It was really, really insightful. And talking about measuring value, how do you test and validate it? And I think we've heard a lot of those concepts today. So thank you, all three of you. Really appreciate it. And thank you to our audience for sticking with us on this conversation. Really appreciate it. And we will see you on other events very similar to this. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Greetings.